The dust hung thick in the air like a bad omen, choking the last rays of the autumn sun over Westbridge, Texas. It was 1884, and the final livestock auction of the season had drawn every roughneck, rancher and drifter within 50 miles. The stock pens buzzed with the lowing of cattle and the sharp cracks of whips, but beneath it all simmered a tension that could snap like a frayed rope. I'd ridden into town that day against my better judgment. Coulter Grange wasn't the type to mingle with crowds unless it meant stocking up on feed or replacing a lame horse. But something pulled me there, a gut feeling I couldn't shake, like the wind whispering warnings before a storm. I pulled my hat low over my eyes, leaning against the rail of the pen where the horses shifted uneasily. The air reeked of sweat and manure, mixed with the sour tang of cheap whiskey from the men clustered around. That's when I saw her. She stood at the back gate, barefoot in the dirt, her dress torn at the hem and clinging to her frame like it had seen too many hard miles. Her hair was a tangled mess, stuck to her face with grime and what looked like dried tears, though her eyes were dry. Steady, almost unnervingly so. A rope looped around her wrist, the other end gripped by a bleary-eyed drunkard swaying on his feet, a bottle dangling from his free hand. Beside her trembled a bay mare, ribs jutting sharp through its hide, flanks striped with old whip marks crusted in blood. The horse's eyes rolled wild, but the girl, she couldn't have been more than 19, stood still as stone, arms hanging limp at her sides, no fight in her posture, no plea in her gaze, just that quiet stare like she was looking through the world instead of at it. The drunk noticed me watching and flashed a gap-toothed grin, lifting his bottle in a mock toast. "Hey there, stranger. Got yourself a bargain here. $1 flat, that's all I'm asking. Take the horse, and you get the girl thrown in for free?" His words slurred together, drawing chuckles from the railbirds nearby. One spat a wad of tobacco into the dust, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "She don't talk none," the drunk continued, yanking the rope just enough to make her stumble forward a step. "Don't hear a damn thing either, but she works like a mule. Cooks, cleans, don't backtalk. Cheap labor far as I'm concerned." The laughter rippled low and mean through the crowd. I felt a heat rise in my chest, not just anger, but something deeper, a twist in my gut that reminded me of all the wrongs I'd seen in this godforsaken frontier. Men trading lives like they were poker chips, women reduced to less than livestock. I'd lost my own ma young to a fever that took her quick and left my pa a hollow shell. Since then I'd built my life on solitude, tending my small spread out in the hills, far from the noise of towns like this. But standing there, watching her eyes meet mine, not with desperation, not with hope, but with a kind of recognition that hit me like a bullet, I couldn't walk away. I turned halfway, ready to mount up and ride out, leave this mess for someone else. But then she shifted, just a fraction, and in that moment her gaze locked on mine again. It wasn't pity I saw. It was like she knew me, saw the scars I carried inside, the ones no one else bothered to notice. My hand went to my coat pocket without thinking, fingers closing around the single silver dollar I'd brought for supplies. I held it up, letting it catch the fading light, then flipped it into the drunk's open palm. "I'll take both," I said, my voice steady but low, cutting through the murmurs. The laughter turned sharper, edged with mockery. "You buying stock now, Granga?" One of the men jeered, a burly rancher named Harlan who'd tangled with me over water rights once. "Or starting yourself a collection?" Another, a wiry kid with a fresh scar across his cheek, probably from some barroom brawl, snorted. "Careful, Coulter. That one's got the devil in her eyes. Silent types always do." I ignored them, stepping forward as the drunk stumbled closer, thrusting the rope at me like it was a leash. "She's yours now. Don't come crying when she ain't useful no more." He belched, the stench hitting me like a wave, but my eyes were on her. She flinched when he yanked the rope one last time, instinct kicking in despite her stillness. Without a word, I reached out, my fingers brushing hers as I loosened the knot. The rope fell to the dust, coiling like a dead snake. She didn't rub her wrist, didn't say thank you. Couldn't, from what he'd said. But she looked up at me, and in that silence, something passed between us. A spark, maybe, or just the weight of shared loneliness. I gave the mare's lead a gentle tug and turned toward my wagon hitched at the edge of the pens. She followed, not behind like a shadow, but beside me, her bare feet padding soft in the dirt. The crowd parted, whispers following us like ghosts. As we rolled out of West Bridge, the wheels creaking over the hard-packed earth. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. I glanced back once, seeing the town shrink in the distance, a cluster of weathered buildings and fading smoke. She sat in the wagon bed, curled in the corner under a worn blanket I'd tossed her, eyes fixed on the hills ahead. Not a backward glance from her either. Forward. That's where we were headed, though I didn't know then what that meant. The road home stretched long and narrow, winding between low hills dusted with fading grass. Dust rose in our wake, settling quiet as the light bled away. The chill crept in with the dusk, nipping at my knuckles on the reins. I wasn't much for talk, never had been. My pa raised me on silence, the kind that filled the spaces where words failed. But with her there, the quiet felt different, heavier, like it carried secrets. By the time we crested the last rise and my cabin came into view, night had fallen full. It wasn't much, a squat structure of squared timbers, low roof, chimney puffing thin smoke from the fire I'd banked that morning. But it held against the wind, and that's all a man like me needed. I stepped down from the bench, unhitching the team while she waited, then finally rose and followed me across the cold porch. Her feet didn't flinch on the rough planks. She moved like she'd walked worse paths. Inside, I lit the lamp, its glow spilling into the single room. The place was plain. Iron stove, oak table scarred from years of use, a few cabinets stocked with basics. The hearth crackled low, casting shadows that danced like memories. She stood by the wall watching me with that same steady gaze. I ladled water from the bucket into a tin cup and set it on the table. She stepped forward, cradling it in both hands, drinking slow and deliberate. No rush, no greed, just need met quietly. After a spell, I pulled a stub of chalk from the drawer under the stovetop and crossed to the doorframe. Tapping it with my knuckle, I met her eyes. Name? My voice came out softer than intended, like the question was a gift, not a demand. She stared for a beat, then walked over, calm as a summer stream. Crouching, she pressed the chalk to the wood, her fingers steady. 5 letters, slanted and soft. Iris. I read it aloud, letting it settle in the room. Iris. It fit her like a flower blooming in barren soil, delicate but tough. She nodded faintly, then turned toward the back door, stepping out into the cold toward the barn. I didn't stop her. Standing there, staring at those letters, I felt something shift inside me. Not just a name, but a beginning, one I hadn't realized I was starving for. The next morning broke with frost glazing the pasture, the sun struggling through a haze. Coffee in hand, I stepped out, spotting the barn door ajar. Crossing the yard, boots crunching on the thaw-soft ground, I pushed it open. Dust motes swirled in the pale light filtering through the slats. The bay mare stood in her stall, head low, but not trembling like before. Iris knelt beside her, one hand gliding a damp cloth over the scarred flank, the other holding a stained strip already used. She didn't glance up, but I knew she sensed me there. I leaned on the frame, arms folded. I'd seen horses kick men clear across a barn for less, but this mare just breathed steady, letting Iris work. No words, no coaxing, just that quiet rhythm, like she was listening to the wounds instead of tending them. It stirred something in me, a warmth I hadn't felt since boyhood. Watching my ma hum while she mended my Pay's shirts, Iris moved with the same grace, her silence louder than any song. That afternoon, the air turned thick, warm in a way that didn't sit right. The sky took on a copper hue, wind shifting, uneasy. I headed out to check the calf pen behind the shed. One of the young ones had gone off feed. Halfway through inspecting its leg, the barn door banged open. Iris burst out barefoot, hair whipping around her face. She didn't shout, couldn't, but she grabbed my sleeve, pulling hard. I dropped the bucket. "What is it?" She pointed past the ridge, her body trembling with urgency, not fear. I took one step and then the sky split. Lightning cracked down on the old oak behind the shed, the flash blinding, the thunder knocking the breath from my lungs. The tree tore in half with a scream of splintering wood, flames racing up its trunk. Sparks showered the dry grass, smoke billowing black. The mare bucked in her stall, panicked whinnies echoing. I stared at Iris, silhouetted against the firelight. She'd known, not after the first gust before. Pulled me clear just in time. My heart pounded, not from the near miss, but from the wonder of it. How? Why me? She met my gaze, eyes fixed not on the blaze, but on me. Like she saw the storm inside me, too. We doused the fire with buckets from the well. the smoke clearing as night fell. Back at the table, 2 tin mugs steaming, the silence wrapped around us. Iris pulled her shawl tight but sat straight, unbroken. I glanced at the silver dollar I'd left by the stove. It looked small now, insignificant. Picking it up, I turned it in my palm. That's what they figured you were worth," I said quietly. $1. She didn't look at the coin. She looked at me. Then slow, she reached across, brushing my sleeve. Just once, light as a breath. It sent a shiver through me, not cold but alive, like she'd touched something deeper than skin. I set the dollar beside her cup, and for the first time in years, the loneliness that had gnawed at me eased. Just a little, but enough to breathe. 2 days on, I walked the back pasture, hat in hand, the grass brittle underfoot. At the edge stood an old oak, roots clutching stone. Beneath it, a grave marker, simple and weathered. E. Grange, 1819-1870. My pa. No fancy words, just dates. I'd been 17 when the land passed to me, inked on a deed still warm from the war. No one asked about the family before us. No one cared. I'd fenced it post by post, but the guilt sat heavy, like blood-stained soil. Footsteps crunched behind me. Iris. She stopped a few paces back, hands in her shawl. Her eyes flicked from me to the grave, understanding without explanation. "I never earned this," I muttered. "Pa took it in someone else's fight, carried the weight, passed it to me." She stepped closer, careful, like approaching a skittish colt. Then she took my hand, placed it over my chest, holding it there. Not comfort, reminder. The beat of my heart under my palm, the ache it held. She knelt by the stone, brushing leaves away, fingers tracing the edge as if reading unseen stories. That night I dreamed of fire. Not lightning, but cannons, dirt exploding under boots, my pa's voice rough through the smoke. "I gave you the land, son, and the blood with it." I woke sweating, the room dark save for a glow by the hearth. Iris sat in the rocking chair, candle flickering beside her. On the table lay a small blue handkerchief, soft with age, stitches crooked. My ma's, locked away in the chest under the bed for a decade. "Iris," I whispered. She didn't turn, just rose and slipped out, leaving me with the quiet. How had she found it? Some things I reckoned weren't hunted, they were felt. Whispers started small, like weeds in spring. Martha Weaver, the widow down the road with a tongue sharper than a branding iron, leaned over her fence one day while I rode by. "That girl of yours watches the cattle too close, Coulter. Like she knows which'll drop next." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion glinting. By midweek, the preacher's son, a lanky boy named Tommy with more Bible quotes than sense, added fuel at the blacksmith's. She touched our goat. 2 days later, the kid came early. Ain't natural. No one had heard Iris speak, and that void let folks fill it with fears. At the general store, a mother yanked her daughter behind her as Iris passed, basket of flour in arm. Someone spat near her boots at the post office. She didn't flinch, but her grip tightened, steps quieter. I saw it, the way she folded inward under their stares. It tore at me, that silence turning from peace to prison. Then the ranch hand's boy, little Jem, fell ill, a fever burning hot enough to rattle his frail frame. His ma, Eliza, wept by his cot in their barn shack. Doc was east for a wedding. No help came. But Iris did. She slipped in, unasked, knelt by him, hand on his chest, then brow. No prayer, just listening. Then she clipped herbs from the drying wall, lavender, feverfew, rabbit tobacco, brewing them into a bitter tea. Jem drank, slept, and by dawn sat up, hungry. Eliza clutched Iris's hand, tears streaming. "Thank you, child. God bless you." But next day at the well, her voice carried, "How'd she know? I didn't say what ailed him. She just knew." Fear crept back, fog-like. 3 days later they came, 8 strong, men and women from town, torches unlit but gripped like vows. Boots caked in dust, faces set hard. Mr. Withers led, coat too clean for honest work. "We want her gone, Grange." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face like carved wood. "She's done nothing to you." "She hears what she shouldn't," Withers spat. "See storms comin' before the clouds. Talks to beasts like they whisper back." A woman hissed, "My steer dropped dead last week. She laid hands on it." "You think she cursed it?" I asked, voice low. "I think she's cursed." Inside, Iris peered from behind the curtain. She'd heard their approach. Not with ears, with that inner sense. I held up a hand as she moved toward the door. Stepping down, I faced them level, torches between us. "I paid $1 for her," I said clear. tied like stock, but she's listened to me more'n anyone. With hands, breath, heart. The murmurs rose, but no one advanced. Run her off if you must, I added, but you'll go through me. Wither's jaw then clamped shut. Hands loosened, boots turned. Dust rose as they left, quiet, defeated. That night, fire the only sound, Iris set cider on the stove, sat beside me. No chalk, no signs, just her hand over mine. Not thanks, not sorry, truth. I turned my palm, fingers curling gentle around hers. In that quiet, it was enough. But deep down, I wondered if the storm had truly passed, or if this was just the eye.